Good afternoon. It's still morning for me because I'm in Oakland, California, but good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, whatever time it is. I'm so excited to be here. First of all, I want to thank D'Angela and the entire team for the incredible amount of work. It's hard for me to imagine how quickly this came together. And D'Angela, I could tear up with how much I appreciate what you have done to maintain Prince's legacy and to just do it in such a graceful, dedicated way. So I'm grateful to be a part of this. I should acknowledge, because I'm a transparent facilitator, that I had a lot of problems with my PowerPoint, and I'm just a little trying to get settled with that. But many of you who've seen me present before know that I have a whole lot of different experiences with Prince. So I'm gonna give you my bona fides for a few minutes before I get into my story. So as D'Angela said, I'm Dereca Blackmon. I use she and they pronouns. I always like to tell you what my gender pronouns are because you can't tell what they are by looking at me. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, so you already know this is about to be fire. And I am the CEO of a company called Inclusion Design Group, which you can check out in the expo. And D'Angela wanted me to lift that work up, as well as my speaking work, Dereca Speaks, because I have a long history of spiritual activism, which means for me, as a minister, I want to integrate my commitment to activism with my commitment to spirituality. And as you'll see, a lot of the integration in my life parallels a lot of the integration that Prince embodied. And so I'm grateful to have that experience. So let's see, I'm a minister, CEO of Inclusion Design Group, where we do training on diversity and education, and mostly in corporate, which means I'm the most popular person in the world right now, which is why I'm a little tired. All of a sudden, Black folks in diversity education are popular. We don't leave that alone. My history as activism focuses on police brutality. I was one of the people who was a lead architect of the movement for justice for Oscar Grant in the city of Oakland when he was killed by transit police. It was one of the first videotaped murders of a Black person who was unarmed in the United States. That was in 2009. What else do I want to say? Oh, I guess these things are important. I taught a class on the Black rhetorics of Prince at Stanford University, which is both my alma mater and where I started doing a lot of diversity and inclusion training. And then I'm going to get into a little bit of some of the other things that I did in my Prince story, and then we're going to get back to Dirty Mind. So here's more of my bona fides. This is a story I've never told before, so I love to give those. Because even though I worked in academia, my story today, I wanted it to be about my personal journey, because I'm not really an academic. I'm what I call a practitioner. I know what I know because I lived it. And so that's what I want to talk about today. So these are two of my friends who I, in fact, married at Paisley Park without permission. We tried to get permission and they were kind of like, we can't give you permission because then other people would want to do it. So we just went over in a corner and did the thing. That was the show where Kendrick Lamar came out. So I feel really blessed to have ever seen that. And then I am also the person who gave what I believe is the first flash mob in country in the world, I think. Which happened in Oakland in 2014. I'm going to, if I can find it, because I'm doing a lot down here, show you just a tiny bit of this. So Prince tweeted about it. So we had about 250 people come out, and it was an amazing, it was actually my birthday. And what happened is Prince was performing, this is the Fox Theater in Oakland. Prince was performing at the Fox Theater, which is literally across the street from my house. So I lived over here and the Fox Theater was there, and it was on my birthday. And so I was like, there's no way, I have to do something. What can I do? And so I put together this flash mob, and Prince tweeted about it, and 250 people came. So this is just a little tiny bit. That's me in the front, who barely had time to learn it because I was so busy organizing it. That's my friend Tanya Leak in the very front. We did Delirious, And him and Lettucey, who's from Oakland, did, oh my God, Ego, not Ego, I want to say Ego Hurt Somebody, but that's not, my God, my brain. Somebody text, because y'all know everything. It'll come to me in a second. So this was the flash mob. There were lots of people. We taught it online. My daughter went to the Oakland School for the Arts. And so we had the dancers learn the flash mob. The dancers from Oakland School for the Arts did that. And then I reached out to my friend Van Jones, who is a correspondent on CNN, but many of you don't know that Van started in working against police brutality in Oakland. So we've known each other for many years. And he had started Yes We Code with Prince. So we made this a awareness raising campaign, the flash mob for Yes We Code. So it's one of the claim to fame that I'm really proud of. I've been on stage a couple times. I've been at Paisley Park a few times. I'm one of those people who never met Prince. I was just in the room, like hoping not to look, but look, y'all know that thing. And so that is one of the things I'm most proud of, is doing the flash mob. I was told by some of the people in his camp that he got on the phone the next morning and was like, what is wrong with y'all? She put this together in 2 days. I've been trying to get you to do it for 10 years. But I think one of the things about the people who love Prince, he didn't like us to call ourselves fans. It's short for fanatic. So actually, I used to call myself a lover of Prince, but obviously that implied connotations that I didn't mean. And those of you who were in Manchester know that a bunch of us got interviewed in the newspaper, and we said something about being lovers of Prince, and then it just all was a big hot mess. But this is those of us who love Prince. We just found ways to try to celebrate who he is still. So I showed you this. This is my friends who I married. This is me in Vegas. One of the things that I have that I don't have with me is my room key from Vegas. And you all know he was on the side of the building, and this was pure joy. Some of us sat in the lobby and peeked through the crack in the door to watch rehearsal. It was, and this was my first time really meeting fans from all over the world. So, well, lovers, fans, we're going to use fans today because y'all know what I mean. So I want to get back to this time that we're here to talk about today. I was 10 years old when Dirty Mind came out. And at that time, I listened to a lot of different music because I grew up in Detroit. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit in a second. And I was listening to Fame was the first cassette tape that I ever had. I had the LP of Hotter Than July. Those are the first two things that I knew all the words to. There was a movie out called Little Darlings by Christy McNichol and Tatum O'Neal, which I really wanted to see because I loved them. But my parents were like, you can't see that because it was actually about them losing their virginity, but I didn't know that. And I begged and begged and begged and begged. My parents said you could see it if you write a paper about it, because I was a pretty precocious little child. And so I did. But I was sneaking and reading Sidney Sheldon and Jackie Collins. So I had a heightened sexuality from the time I was pretty young. And this might be the only place I'm really going to talk about that. I think I mentioned earlier that I'm a minister, but I'm also known as the Irreverent Reverend because I believe we should talk about all aspects of ourselves as included in our spirituality. I probably got that from Prince. But I think I really got my hands on Dirty Mind when I went to middle school, which I was about 12 when I went to 7th grade. And all of my friends, all of my cousins, everybody around me loved Prince. And I'll talk about why that was true in Detroit. But I just want you to imagine what it is to be an adolescent seeing this picture and just having your mind explode with all these hormones and thinking, she has her hands down his pants. Like, dang, ooh, that was that moment where you were just like, ooh. But also there was something to feel inside that I have to say honestly started with seeing Prince. So my sexuality, my awakening, my adolescence is deeply entwined with that experience. And that experience, because it wasn't just him being his hot rock, it was his beauty, his ability to embrace his femininity, his masculinity, his creativity, his genius, his innocence, his curiosity. That is still, I think, my template for what a partner in my life has to be. And so I think many of us who love him, when I taught the class, my students, having grown up with hip hop and all of that, they were like, oh, Professor Blackmon, I think you just like him because he says some old womanized and sexist stuff and you just give him a pass. And I was like, I don't know how to explain to you exactly what it is, but what I played for them was Irresistible Bitch. And I tried to explain how the word bitch that they've grown up with and the context that they've grown up with it is not the context I was introduced to it. We didn't call people bitches. And there wasn't that word in music. I remember it being, in Jackie Collins. The first time I heard bitch on television was on Dynasty. Alexis called her. She was like, you bitch. And we were all like, ah, right? But Irresistible Bitch was something else. And it is the embodiment for me of the contradiction and the combination that Prince was. It was like, it's like, I think some of the female hip hop artists are like, oh, I'm a bad bitch. And that is what I felt. Prince was like, damn, you are just so strong and fly and sexy. And I can't resist the power that you have. And Prince always respected the power of women. I felt empowered listening to his music. And so, I didn't ever feel like I was objectified by his music. I felt like I was adored, right? And worshiped and beautiful and blessed and all of those things. Beautiful, loved, and blessed and all of those things. But he was still hot though. Don't get it twisted. This is Prince at Cobo Arena in Detroit in 1980. So this was before I was ever able to go to a concert. But I saw these pictures and he was just unapologetic. Like, yes, I am going to be sex, not just sexy. I'm going to be sex. And it was amazing. So to all of us, it was like, there were people around, you had the Rick James and the other people, but there was nothing ever like this. If you didn't grow up in this time, and I know a lot of us didn't, and I appreciate the enduring legacy that he had, but this at 12 was just, this was like Playgirl. Like all he needed was to just slide that down and we would have been like in trouble. We were already like in trouble a little bit. I tell my students all the time that the difference between their music and our music is we didn't have headphones, right? I had to actually play Prince in my house. So my mama would be like, what did he just say? But she also saw these pictures too and was like, dang, he's fine. So, that's kind of the environment that I grew up in. Like he was so everything in the community that I grew up in that he definitely got some passes. So I'll come back to this in a second. So I want to talk about, if you ever hear me talk, where you're going to hear me talk about two things about Prince, it's going to be his Blackness and Detroit. So I want to talk about for a second about the conversation about Prince's Blackness, because one of the things that kind of grates on me a lot is that people talk about Prince as transcending Blackness. And that is not my experience at all. I want to go to a quote that was done in the New York Times in 1981 that really, to me, summarized what was wrong with how people thought about him. Robert Palmer in the New York Times said, the fact that white rock fans and radio stations have tended to banish him to the Black music ghetto, my underline, says more about racism in contemporary pop music circles than it does about Prince's songs or his presentation. And this, of course, is him at Grand Central. Oh, I should also say, if you follow my Twitter, you know that I had a huge crush on Andre Simone, like huge. And to this day, my family teases me because they're like, oh, you don't like Prince, you like Andre Simone. And so that's kind of a little funny joke. So last night was mind-blowing for me. But it was also confirming for me that Prince wasn't outside of Blackness. He wasn't transcending that. Black music was not the ghetto that Robert Palmer thought it was. Black music was everything. And it's always been everything. And Prince knew and embodied and experienced that in Minneapolis. He had been exposed to jazz and black rock. I mean, people forget, like Jimi Hendrix, you know, when people talk about guitar players, or if you ask, you know, Rolling Stone, or if you ask Eric Clapton, you know, Prince is the greatest of all time. But, you know, there's Jimi Hendrix is the greatest of all time. Right? Like, I don't know where people get this idea that Prince is outside of Black music. And that's from all accounts, from Chaz, from Andre, from anybody who was around him. He wanted to not be in the Black music ghetto of mainstream music's imagination, not be in the segregation of how radio was playing music. But it wasn't because he didn't think he was Black or his music came, he understood the Black tradition that his music came from. And so it really irks me. And I really want to push all of you who teach and love and talk about Prince to not think about who he is outside of Blackness, because that's not who he was or what he was at all. Gosh, I see I'm already, like, there's so much more I need to talk about, but I'm going to try to watch my time. And D'Angelo, if you could just tell me when I think this says I got like 2 minutes left, but maybe I'm looking at the wrong time. So if you let me know.
You got the 2 minutes. Go on.
How much?
I'll give you like 5 minutes. How about that?
Woo, I have so much to say. You know, I haven't even started talking about Dirty Mind yet. Lord, okay, stop with all the other stuff. Okay, so please don't say Prince is transcending Blackness, because that's not the truth. So I want to talk to you about the Electrifying Mojo, which is a DJ in Detroit who was independent, bought his own radio time, and he played, this is the environment I grew up in. He played entire Prince albums. He had 3 hours on the radio, and he played entire Prince albums all the time when they came out. And he also, though, is considered to be one of the most influential people on the creation of techno, because at the same time he was playing Prince in Detroit, he was playing Kraftwerk, the B-52s, Human League, Devo, like all of those things. And he got Prince's first live radio interview. So at the last conference, I played that, but I'm just going to ask you to go and check out Electrifying Mojo. This was 1986. My first actual Prince concert was the birthday concert. So I do have some great, great experiences there. So Dirty Mind, we got to talk about that. It was, I think, the first album that I knew every single word to. And it, what to me is the epitome of all the different parts. It is the edgiest sexuality, besides some of the things later, but this to me is the edgiest, with Head and Sister and all of those things. But it also had When You Were Mine, and it was the like tender things. But it also had Party Up, which I think is important for us to remember. You know, how you gonna make me kill somebody I don't even know. So it was all the things that he was. But for me, it was the sexuality that I do it all night. That was awakening for me at 12 when I first discovered Dirty Mind, which is like 82. I'm born in 70. And this was such an influence. Detroit was his favorite because we were Mojo fans. We had all of the different kinds of music. So when he came to Detroit, he could play his whole album and we knew all the songs. I had friends who used to answer the phone, chili sauce. I can still sing all the words to Vanity Sixes. If a girl answers, don't hang up. Like, we embraced everything that he was, and it changed us. It changed us for, I think, incredibly much the better. I remember having a conversation in 7th grade with my 2 best friends about whether we would rather go to church or to a Prince concert, and actually thinking we were sinners because we knew we would rather go to a Prince concert. My cousins all got to go to 1999. My best friend had the picture of Prince laying on the bed. And I was like, dang, I wish I could put that up in my room. But we fantasized and we dreamed and we set the standard of what a man should be because of Prince. And all of the Black men around me were dressing like Prince or Morris. We used to have talent shows at Christmas where all my cousins got together and we dressed up like Vanity Six. They made me be Brenda, which hurt my feelings. But it's all Black folks, and my road cousin was really pretty. She got to be Vanity. I had to be Brenda. Brenda's cool, but like I didn't want to be the white girl. There's so much I could say about that. But like even my grandmother, when Controversy came out, I tell the story a lot. When Controversy came out, we played the whole song on the radio. So she heard the Lord's Prayer and she thought the song was Count Your Blessings. And she was in the car like, count your blessings. And I was like, I was not going to tell her that that's not what he was saying. And so I think my story is really about what it meant to grow up in a place that embraced all of who Prince's music was, and what it meant to grow up as a young girl who was defining her sexuality by his freedom and defining the people around her by their willingness to step outside of any box and embrace all of who Black people were, all of what men could be, all of what it meant to love, respect, revere, and fuck a woman, right? Like, who did that? Nobody. And so I guess I'll stop there because I'll get to say more on the panel. But I really thank and appreciate you all for listening and for this opportunity to tell stories that I don't usually tell, right, about Prince and sexuality. So I hope this was enjoyable for you all. And I look forward to questions and conversation on the panel. Thank you.